Ethan Carter sat near the window of the transport ship, as the stars moved past like silver dust. He had left Earth many months ago, but still, he felt like a stranger in this endless space. He was an engineer, not a soldier or a leader, yet he had been chosen to come to a distant colony. He wondered why fate had pulled him into something that felt much larger than his own life. The ship landed on the world of Eldria, a place hidden far away, spoken of only in whispers back on Earth. When Ethan stepped out, his boots touched stone roads polished with age. The city before him shined with marble towers, bridges of gold, and statues of kings and queens long gone. Sunlight poured over the rooftops, giving the whole place a glow that felt almost unreal. He could not believe such a world was built by human hands. The air was warm and carried the scent of flowers mixed with smoke from torches that lined the streets. People looked at him with both curiosity and caution. Whispers followed him as he walked with his escort. He felt the weight of many eyes, but none heavier than the two sisters who walked at his side. They were called Cassandra and Alina, warriors of the Queen and protectors of this city. Their armor caught the light and gleamed like silver fire. Their movements were strong yet graceful, each step measured and full of purpose. They did not speak to Ethan at first. They only watched him, their gaze sharp and unbroken. He felt as if they could see every secret he held inside. Cassandra was taller, her hair dark and tied back, her eyes steady and calm like deep water. Lena was shorter, her hair golden and flowing, her eyes brighter, filled with a fierceness that could burn. Together, they seemed like two halves of one soul, unshakable and proud. Ethan could not tell if they were guiding him as protectors or surrounding him as guards to make sure he did not escape. The path they took led to the Queen's Citadel, a place high above the city with walls carved in stone and marked with banners. At the gates, soldiers bowed their heads as the sisters passed, but their eyes stayed fixed on Ethan. He felt smaller with every step, as if the weight of history itself pressed down on him. The Queen was not yet ready to see him, so Cassandra and Alina led him to a great hall filled with carvings and symbols. There, they finally spoke. Their voices carried strength, but also something more, something that felt like a warning. They asked why he had come, what he sought, and what he believed humans were meant to become. Ethan tried to answer with honesty, though his voice shook. He said he did not come as a fighter or as a ruler, but only as someone who wished to help. He said he believed humans were strongest when they stood together, and weakest when divided. The sisters listened, their eyes never leaving him. For a moment, silence filled the hall. Then Alina laughed softly, though there was no humor in it. She said his words sounded simple, too simple for the trials that lay ahead. Cassandra did not laugh. She only nodded slowly, as if she was studying a puzzle that she had not yet solved. As the day moved toward evening, the sisters did not leave his side. They showed him the city, its streets alive with markets and songs, its people moving with both pride and fear. Ethan noticed that while the city shined, it also carried scars of old battles, cracks in walls and statues broken but still standing. The people bowed to the sisters, but their eyes showed the weight of worries not spoken aloud. By the time the sun set, Ethan felt more trapped than welcomed. He wondered if he had been brought here as a guest or as a prisoner. When the sisters walked close, he could feel the heat of their armor and the strength in their presence. He thought of home, of quiet nights back on Earth, and knew those days were far behind him. Now he was in a place where every step was watched, every word tested. It's where two warrior sisters had already marked him as someone they would not ignore. Ethan woke the next morning to the sound of bells ringing across the city. Sunlight slipped through tall windows and lit the room with a golden glow. He had barely slept, his thoughts heavy with questions. He wondered why the sisters had watched him so closely, why the Queen had not yet spoken to him, and what was expected of him on this strange world. His heart told him something was coming, something that would test him in ways he could not yet see. When Cassandra and Alina arrived, they wore their armor again, polished and sharp. They told Ethan that the Queen had ordered trials to prove if he was worthy of trust. Their voices carried no warmth, but also no cruelty. They spoke as if it was simple truth, and Ethan understood there was no choice. He followed them through long halls, past soldiers who whispered as he passed, until they reached a wide arena made of stone. Inside the arena, people had gathered. They filled the stands, their voices mixing into a low hum. Banners hung from high walls and torches burned even in the daylight. The far end stood the throne of the queen, empty for now, but marked with silver and gold. Ethan felt the weight of every eye upon him. He did not know what kind of trials they had planned, but he knew he had no weapon, no armor, only himself. Cassandra stepped forward first. She told him the first trial was one of strength, but not of the body. A soldier brought forward a great stone, too heavy for one man to lift. Cassandra said he did not need to move it, but he needed to show how he faced something impossible. Ethan looked at the stone, then at the people watching. He placed his hands on it and pushed with all he had. His arms shook, his breath burned, and sweat covered his face, but the stone did not move. Still, he did not stop. He tried again and again, until his body gave out and he fell to his knees. Cassandra looked down at him, her face unreadable. Then she told him he had passed, not because of strength, but because he did not quit. Alina came forward for the second trial. She said this one was of truth. She asked him questions, her voice sharp and cutting. Why had he come to Eldria? What secrets did he hide? What fears lived in his heart? Each question felt like a blade, but Ethan answered as plain as he could. He told them he had come to build, to learn, and to help where he could. He said his only secrets were doubts of his own worth, and his greatest fear was failing those who trusted him. When he finished, silence fell. Lena stared at him for a long time, her eyes searching, and then she nodded once. The final trial came from both sisters together. They said it was the trial of courage. Soldiers opened a gate at the side of the arena, and from it came a flood of fire and smoke. The people gasped, but it was not a beast or a weapon. It was only fire rolling across the floor, controlled by hidden channels, but fierce enough to burn if he faltered. Ethan had to walk across it to the other side, where the throne waited. His heart pounded. The heat stung his face. But he stepped forward. One step, then another, each one harder than the last. Flames rose near his feet, smoke filled his chest, but he kept moving until at last he reached the throne. When he turned back, the arena was silent. Then cheers began to rise. Slow at first, and then loud enough to shake the air. Cassandra and Alina walked toward him, their armor catching the light. For the first time since he had met them, their eyes held something new, not only suspicion, but also a spark of respect. They told him he had passed all 3 trials. He was no longer just an outsider, but someone the queen herself might wish to see. As they left the arena together, Ethan felt both relief and fear. Relief that he had not failed, fear that the path ahead was only growing harder. The sisters did not smile, but their steps were closer to his now, as if they no longer saw him as weak, but as someone who might yet stand beside them. The city around him still looked vast and strange, but for the first time he felt a small thread of belonging tying him to it. The night air in Eldria carried both warmth and tension. After the trials, Ethan thought he might be given rest, but instead, the sisters stayed at his side. They led him through winding halls of the citadel, their armor glowing in the torchlight. Asked where they were taking him, but they gave no answer. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the echo of their boots against stone floors. When they reached a tall chamber guarded by heavy doors, Alina turned to him with eyes that burned like firelight. She told him the trials had ended, but the true test had only begun. Ethan felt his chest tighten. He asked what she meant, but Cassandra opened the doors before he could say more. Inside was a smaller hall, lined with banners and golden shields. The air smelled of oil and smoke, and the walls seemed to close around him. Cassandra and Alina stepped in first, then motioned for him to follow. Once inside, they closed the doors behind them, leaving only the soft glow of torches. Ethan stood between them, unsure if he was safe or trapped. Alina moved closer, her presence sharp and unyielding. She said the queen had given them orders. Ethan must not leave their sight, not even through the night. She spoke slowly, every word heavy, as if it was both a warning and a command. Ethan felt his breath catch. He asked why such closeness was needed. Cassandra's voice was calm, but carried no softness. She said their duty was not only to test him, but to bind him. Trust was not spoken in Eldria, it was sealed. She told him he would sleep between them that night, as their custom demanded when trust was sworn with an outsider. It was not a request, it was law. At first, Ethan did not understand. Back on Earth, such a thing would have been strange, even laughable. But here it carried meaning he could not yet grasp. The way the sisters stood over him made it clear. This was not about desire or comfort. This was about chains of honor, bonds stronger than words. He wanted to refuse, but he saw no way forward if he did. The sisters guided him to a long chamber where a single bed stood, carved from dark wood, wide enough for 3. Cassandra removed her armor with steady hands, piece by piece, until only a plain robe covered her frame. Alina did the same, her golden hair falling free across her shoulders. They set their weapons aside, swords resting against the wall, then turned to him with expectant eyes. Ethan's heart pounded, but he forced himself to step forward. He removed his boots, his jacket, and laid them neatly on a chair. The weight of the moment pressed on him. He did not feel like a guest. He did not feel like a prisoner. He felt like something in between, bound by rules he did not understand, but dared not break. The sisters lay down first, one on each side of the bed. Cassandra's face was calm, her eyes half closed as if she trusted the silence. Elena's gaze stayed on him, sharp and bright, until he lowered himself between them. The bed felt cold at first, then warm as their presence closed in around him. He lay on his back, stiff and uncertain, the ceiling above him painted with symbols he could not read. For a long time, none of them spoke. The only sound was their breathing. Then Cassandra broke the silence. She said he had shown strength, truth, and courage, but now he must show something greater, stillness. To lie between warriors was to carry their trust, and to fail was to be cast out forever. Lena added that this night was not about fear, but about courage of the heart. She told him that if he fled, he would be hunted, but if he stayed, he would be remembered. Ethan closed his eyes, felt trapped, yet also strangely safe. He thought of the fire trial, of the stone he could not move, of the questions that had cut into him. All of it had led here, to this strange night between 2 women who seemed both his captors and his protectors. He did not know if he would sleep, but he knew this night would decide his place in their world. As the torches dimmed and the weight of silence grew heavier, Ethan realized he was no longer only a visitor. He was part of something larger, bound to the warrior sisters by a vow he had never spoken but could not escape. Ethan did not know when sleep finally came to him. The night was long and strange, filled with the steady breathing of the sisters on either side. When he opened his eyes again, the torches had burned low and the room was quiet except for the soft crackle of fire. He lay still, remembering where he was, between Cassandra and Alina, held by a bond he did not fully understand. His heart told him the night was not just a test, but something greater, a choice he could not turn away from. Alina was the first to speak. Her voice was low, but clear in the silence. She told Ethan that people of the city feared weakness more than death, and that trust had always been hard to give. She said their world had survived because warriors stood firm, never allowing outsiders to break their lines. Then she looked at him, her eyes bright even in the dim light, and told him he had shown more courage than many who called themselves fighters. Cassandra spoke next, almost gentle, but carried the weight of years of duty. She said the trials were never about strength of body alone. They were meant to reveal a heart that could stand against fear, pride, and lies. She admitted that when Ethan first arrived, she had believed he would fail. But now, she saw a man who carried honesty as his shield. She said such a man could not be ignored. Ethan listened, unsure how to respond. He felt both honored and afraid. He asked why their queen had not spoken to him directly, why all the tests came from the sisters instead. Cassandra explained that the queen trusted them above all others. If they judged him unworthy, the queen would never waste her time. Alina added that the queen believed in bonds, not words, and that only those who shared a night of trust with the sisters could stand before her. The truth of their words struck Ethan deeply. He realized this was not only about him proving his worth, it was about them as well, about their people, about the fear of betrayal that had shaped their world. He understood then that his role was not just as an outsider, but as a bridge. If he failed, he would close a door that might never open again. As the night wore on, the sisters shared more of their burdens. Alina spoke of battles she had fought, of comrades lost, of nights when she had stood on the walls with no certainty of seeing morning. Her voice carried fire, but beneath it was sorrow. Cassandra told of the years she had stood by their queen, watching enemies circle like wolves, never knowing if peace would ever come. Her words were steady, but her eyes held shadows. They were warriors, strong and proud, but they were also human, carrying wounds unseen. For the first time, Ethan saw beyond the armor in the stern eyes. He saw two women who had given their lives to duty, who had built walls around their hearts because they could not afford weakness. He felt a weight settle on him, the weight of their trust. He did not know if he deserved it, but he knew he could not turn away from it. The hours passed, and slowly the tension in the room changed. Where there had been only command, there was now a sense of shared ground. Cassandra closed her eyes, her hand resting near her sword, even in rest. But her breathing slowed as if she finally allowed herself peace. Alina leaned back, her golden hair spilling across the pillow, her gaze softer now as she watched Ethan. She told him that from this night forward, he was no longer a stranger. He was bound to them, not by chains, but by choice. Ethan felt the truth of it settle inside him. He was still uncertain, still afraid of what lay ahead, but for the first time, he did not feel alone. He knew the path before him would be hard, but he also knew he had stepped into something greater than himself. The night had not taken his freedom. It had given him a place in their story. When the first light of dawn touched the windows, the sisters rose. Cassandra told him the queen would see him now. Alina smiled faintly, a rare and fleeting smile, and said that whatever came next, he would not face it alone. Ethan followed them from the chamber, his steps unsteady, but his heart stronger, knowing that the night had changed everything. The hall of the queen was vast, built of stone that reached higher than the eye could follow. Banners of red and gold hung from the walls, and sunlight streamed through tall windows, filling the chamber with light. Ethan entered with Cassandra on one side and Alina on the other. His steps echoed against the floor, and the weight of the moment pressed on him with every breath. People lined the walls, soldiers, nobles, and citizens, all watching in silence. The queen sat upon her throne at the far end, her crown glimmering in the light, her presence steady and commanding. The sisters stopped and bowed their heads, but Ethan only lowered his eyes, unsure what to do. The queen's voice carried across the hall, calm but strong. She said she had heard of his trials, of the stone he could not move, of the fire he had crossed, and of the night he had endured between her guardians. She asked him why he had not turned away, why he had chosen to stand even when he could have failed quietly. Ethan felt the eyes of the hall pressing on him, and he spoke as plainly as he could. He said he did not come to prove he was stronger than others, but because he believed people were meant to stand together, even when afraid. There was silence after his words, but the queen's gaze did not waver. Then she rose from her throne and stepped down the stairs, her robe flowing behind her. She stood before him, her eyes searching his face, and then she looked to Cassandra and Alina. She asked them what they saw in him. Cassandra spoke first, her tone steady. She said he was honest, though unsure of himself, and that honesty was a rare strength. Alina followed, her voice sharp but certain. She said he was untested in battle, but his courage was real, and courage was the heart of every fighter. The queen listened, and then she lifted her hand, motioning for silence in the hall. She told the people that bonds were not made by words alone, but by fire, by trials, and by nights when trust was tested. She said the outsider had walked through all of these and had not broken. Then she placed her hand on Ethan's shoulder and told him that from that day forward, he would no longer be seen as a stranger. He was bound to their world, and his name would be remembered with honor. The hall shook with the sound of voices rising in approval. Soldiers struck their weapons against the floor, nobles bowed their heads, and the people cheered. Ethan felt his chest tighten, not with fear this time, but with something new, a sense of belonging he had never known. The sisters stood close on either side, their eyes no longer filled with suspicion, but with quiet pride. The queen returned to her throne, and the hall began to empty. Cassandra turned to Ethan and told him his path was only beginning. Alina added that trust won in a night must be kept for a lifetime. Their words reminded him that this honor was not a gift, but a duty. He nodded, knowing that whatever came, he could not turn back now. As they left the citadel, the city stretched before them, alive with sound and color. People bowed as they passed, children waved, and soldiers saluted. Ethan walked between the sisters, feeling their presence as a shield and as a bond. He thought of the trials, of the fire, of the silence of the night, and of the Queen's hand resting on his shoulder. He knew he would carry those moments forever. That night, when the city grew quiet, Ethan stood on a balcony high above the streets. Cassandra and Alina joined him, the three of them looking out at the stars. Alina said their queen had chosen well, and Cassandra agreed with a small nod. Ethan did not speak at first. He only watched the stars. The same stars he had seen from his ship, but now they felt different. He was no longer a traveler passing through. It was part of a story greater than his own. He turned to the sisters and told them he would not fail them. His voice was steady, not loud, but filled with truth. Cassandra placed her hand on his arm, and Alina gave him a faint smile. For the first time since he had left Earth, Ethan felt not like an outsider, but like a man who had found his place. The warrior sisters had trapped him once, but in the end, they had given him freedom. His name would be remembered, bound to theirs, carried into the songs of the people of Eldria for generations to come.